Actually, we finished the introduction that we began a few weeks ago on the Bible, and you can't understand the Bible, and
Last
you see
year.
the bigger picture. The what?
Last year.
Last
few weeks
Is it last
ago.
year? Is it only last year? So anyway, now we've got a broader understanding of what the Bible is. We'll look at some of the deeper questions that probably this is, if we're talking to people at all about life after death, about God, the existence of God, there's a lot of people out there who are struggling with this at the moment. They just don't believe in God anymore. And for them, you know, evolution is such a wonderful thing with so much, these scientists talk with so much confidence. How on earth can you believe anything else but that you're an animal and you came from an amoeba and swam up the Clyde or whatever? Anyway,
so much on television
that's right.
forward of this.
We'll touch on that a little bit.
And Bill Bailey's on it just now.
Bill Bailey, yeah, he's
natural selection and all that.
yeah. Brian
There's
Cox.
something to be said for it, mind you.
Well, we'll see. You see, Brian Cox is the new flavour of the month as far as evolution is concerned. He's a good-looking guy. He's a handsome lad. He's charming and he's intelligent.
Got a good imagination.
He
He's
fell
got
off
a
the
good
back of the
imagination.
bus.
Yeah.
That's right,
He fell off the back of the bus.
Well, I mean, him and two of his pals, Dara O'Brien and one of the other comedians, I can't remember who that is, they're actually going round Britain at the moment with actual shows. And it's basically to promote science, but it's a good part of promoting science and have a good old dig at those who believe in God and the way past. Dara O'Brien used to be a Roman Catholic, and having left Catholicism, he's done the opposite. Very, very strongly speaks against religion in general, and so that's what they're doing promoting. Brian Cox is interesting because in his science peers, he's not flavour of the month because he's the popular guy, and a lot of them, you know, stuff he's putting across on the TV, they've already rejected and moved on from. But because it's a popular science, then they're quite happy to let him take, you know, credit at the moment. But a lot of them behind the scenes, we'd have a good debate with him as well. So it's interesting. But hopefully we'll see some of that as it develops, okay? And I hope that some of this might be useful in us talking to people and helping to see, well, maybe there's two sides to every story. And maybe we'll have to look at the other one. Okay, so anyway.
How can they really tell how old anything is?
We'll find out. We shall
Well,
find out.
dating is the answer to it all, you know.
You think so? We shall see. We shall see. Okay.
Everybody tells me that.
All right. Well, you just take your.
What's that? Ravi
Shankar. You just take your you know your healing aids in, and we'll see what. Okay. So the concept is there a God? That's really a big question for a lot of people. We believe there is, they believe there isn't, and really, does he care, okay? If it is a God, does he care about us? One of the reasons why David Attenborough doesn't believe or didn't believe in a God was because, he had been doing some programs where he saw these bugs boring into some other bugs and doing some horrible stuff. And thinking to himself, well, how on earth can a good God make something that does that to you? You know. So in his background, in his field, he was struggling with that. But it's interesting. One of the fairly recent programs he was on, he admitted, well, maybe there is a God, which is a huge statement to make. This is older. Brian Cox wouldn't do that. He's too arrogant. He's too young. But as somebody who's older, they begin to realise that maybe they don't have all the answers. And there could be another edge to that. So, the answers that we give to these questions will determine our philosophy on life. Okay, is there a God? If so, what he's like? What is he like? Does he care? That's really important answers, because how you deal with those, how you come to terms with those, makes a huge difference in the attitude you have towards life in general and how you live it. No man can pass over these questions as if they were of no importance, these big statements really. So as we'll go over this next period, we're going to look at some of these things and see if we can come up with some answers. The Bible doesn't attempt to prove the existence of God. It assumes the fact and states, the fullness in his heart, there is no God. Now there's lots of other stuff, obviously we're not going to be able to deal with everything, but there's a lot of statements similar to that. The lack of scriptural proof strikes us as unusual, since the entire Bible is based on the premise that there is a God. So God doesn't, in his wisdom, he doesn't sit down, apart maybe a little bit of Job, he doesn't sit down a third book somewhere and say, this is all about Christian evidences. He doesn't do that. He says, I exist. You know, why am I going to prove it? Because you've got enough evidence there. And so he doesn't spend a particular book or chapter or something dealing primarily with the concept of God. Though that could be, you know, Job's pretty good as far as that's concerned, and Isaiah, and a few of these others.
I would change that word assumes. Because it's not an assumption. I would say that it takes it for granted that there is a God. A Jewish philosopher wouldn't argue it because there's no argument for it in the scriptures, the Old Testament, as you say, because a Jewish philosopher didn't think it necessary.
That's right. That's right. I would stick with the word assumes anyway, and I'll have a reason for that.
Oh well, that's good.
Okay. You'll have to bear with my assumptions.
We'll be patient with you.
Okay.
We'll be gentle with you.
Because at the end of the day, everything that we believe carries with it certain assumptions, and we're going to deal with that a little bit. You may not disagree with that, that's not a problem. Okay, but at the end of the day, everything that we believe carries certain assumptions because we don't know everything. And therefore, there are certain things, whether logically, reasonably, we can assume, and because we do assume them, then we take the next logical steps from that. And just hang around there with that idea, okay? But even though a Jew may not assume the existence of God because he knows God exists, because the Bible tells him God exists, the very fact of the Bible itself carries with it certain assumptions, and we're going to look at that as we go along, okay? So what about it? So, there's two possible reasons may be given for this lack of proof. The idea that God was already universally known and understood when the Bible was written, and hence such proof was not needed. When Moses wrote the first 5 chapters, he was dealing with something that he felt was in the public domain to a certain degree, that there was a God. There was lots of gods. Very few people didn't believe in God, some sort of God. Now whether that was the God of the Bible or not, that's a different matter. But everybody believed in some sort of, or most people, let me change that, because it's always wrong to make certain dogmatic things, because there's always the exception to the rule. And so as long as you understand that and go along with that, it's fine. The idea that God was universal when the Bible was written, and hence such proof was needed. You don't need to prove that God exists, because everybody knows God existed, okay? So, then we have the second one. The evidence in the world around us of the existence of God is so strong that only a fool would deny his existence, and the Bible was not written for fools. So here's 2 reasons why the Bible just states that God exists. Because it takes for granted that everybody would understand the evidence, and therefore they don't need to make that argument. It's a bit like when we're talking to some people about maybe some aspect of religion. Perhaps they believe strongly in faith. So we don't need to spend time arguing or discussing what faith is and what faith means, because they already understand that. They already accept that. Perhaps we may argue over repentance or something else. And therefore our time is spent in debating the things that we disagree on, rather than spend time with the stuff we already agree on. So the Bible doesn't spend time debating, does God exist? Because the Bible assumes and tells you, yeah, of course God exists. Any fool can see that, or should be able to see that, okay? And therefore, it doesn't spend the time arguing for the existence of God. However, in this age of skepticism, it's become almost necessary to demonstrate, if it's possible to demonstrate, that there is such a being as God, and that we can have a relationship with Him. And for a lot of people, they look at us and think, well, sometimes they say, I wish I had your faith. I wish I could believe like you, but I just can't see it. you know. So sometimes we're a bit hard on people, or I used to be a bit hard on people. I'm getting a little bit more flexible in my old age, you know. When I realised how long it took me to understand some things, I'm beginning to feel a little bit of empathy with some people who just can't quite see it yet. You know what I mean? You've got to give people time. Not everybody is at the same point. And therefore what you need to do is give them the time and obviously give them the evidence or things to think about that can help them develop into where perhaps you are now if you are further down the road. So, in this age of skepticism, it's become necessary to demonstrate that there really is a God. The atheist who denies the existence of God will not accept the Bible as proof. Now he says to you, I don't believe in God. And you say, well, I believe in God. He says, well, how do you know there's a God? Well, the Bible says, and you say, but I don't believe in the Bible. So there's your first main piece of evidence that he's not even going to listen to. He thinks that's a fragmented book. It's put together by people who are ignorant and old-fashioned, and it's irrelevant. The Bible's irrelevant to them. So when you say, but the Bible says, and they say, well, who cares? I don't accept your premise. I don't accept your appreciation of the Bible as the Word of God. And therefore you can't even start to debate with them, because you've got no common ground. And that's why someone like this is important, because here we're starting pre-Bible. We're arguing for an existence of God. We're not arguing for an existence of God primarily because the Bible says God exists. We're going to argue for the existence of God primarily from the fact that we exist and that the things around us exist. And then we'll look at the same evidence that an atheist looks at, and the only difference is we see the same thing, but because of our assumptions and our background, we then bring something different out of it. We come to a different conclusion. Okay? And there's nothing wrong with that. Somebody's got to be wrong. Anyway, so we've got to build our case for a different matter. So we need to consider a few reasons for believing in a supreme being. Before we can lay some kind of foundation, we're going to ask some questions and see if they're realistic. Cause and effect is always a good one. It is evident that man and this world about him exists. Even the atheist can't deny reality. But how did these things come to be? Now even that assumes a certain thing. Because there are people who call themselves existentialists. They don't necessarily believe they exist. And they don't believe you exist. So how on earth can you say God exists when I have trouble believing you exist? I'm speaking to you. You know, it's an existentialist. You know, when you argue with these guys, you're in a different ball game altogether. So at least we've got to have some common terms that we can, common realities that we can agree to. So I believe that I exist. Do you believe that you exist? Well, now we've got something to start off on. You know, Descartes said, I think, therefore I am. And therefore, that was his basis. He said, I think. Well, I must exist to be able to think. I am. I exist. So therefore, from that basis, then you move on to the next.
If you slap an existentialist's face, what then? If you slap his face.
Well, it's a bit like.
Don't touch you. I don't exist.
I know this is true. That was just something. A figment of your mind. Well, it's almost like what's the Seventh-day Adventist? Not the Seventh-day. It's the
Christian Scientist.
Christian Scientist. I don't believe in pain. And I don't believe in death. How's your daddy doing? Oh, he's ill. Well, he said, no, he's not ill. He only thinks he's ill.
Yes, right.
So he sees him a few weeks later and says, how's your dad? And he says, well, he thinks he's dead.
He thinks it.
You know? How do you deal with people like that? They're in a different reality, okay?
But does a lion think? Does a cat think? Does a monkey think?
Now there's a difference between thinking about what you're going to do or reasoning about some of the things that I'm going to eat that pie or something like that. Matter of fact, there's a good program on just the other night about whales. Sharks. The guys were saying, why is it that a whole bunch, for no reason at all, as far as they were concerned, these sharks who should be loners have suddenly banded together, and I think there are 100 odd in the group, and they're in people's swimming area and fishing area. And they've realised that the sharks have realised that when they hear a boat, that means people, and wherever you find people fishing, that means on the end of a line there's going to be a fish. And what the sharks, the fishermen are really cheesed off because it's a living, they're not doing for pleasure. Where a year or so ago, they were losing something like 5%, 10% of whatever they caught on the line to these sharks. Now, do you know how much they're losing now? They're losing 80% of what they catch. When they actually get them up in the boat, all they've got left is the head. The sharks have taken the rest. And so they did a trial to kind of try, anyway, that's a different story. But yeah, thinking, you know, there's some sort of rational thought process in most animals. But is it self-aware thinking? Do they contemplate life after death? Yeah. Do they contemplate some of the deeper aspects of reality? Do they think to write a book? Do they think to read a book? That's a different ballgame.
Immorality, wouldn't it?
Immorality, and sometimes morality. You know, a dog will see sausages on the side of the table when you get your back done. He doesn't suddenly think, well, I shouldn't eat these. I better not eat these. If he can think to get away with it, he's gone.
He's gone.
You know?
I also wonder, do children think?
Yes. Yes. There's a different, a child, basically.
Doesn't a child do rather than think?
Well, there's an element of both, because quite often what you do is motivated by what you think.
And there's a difference between thinking and reasoning.
Reasoning, yes.
A child
wouldn't think about writing a book.
Do a thing.
Yeah.
There's no forethought.
Well, actually, there's a good example. You know, when a child is born, it's like a computer desk. It's empty, blank, basically. It's waiting for information, input. Yeah. And then when it gets enough information input, it then decides what to do with that information. There was a kid that was less than about, I think about 10 months old, in a pram, being pushed into a supermarket. And the guy in the butcher's counter with the glass shelves things, as the child passed that morning, the butcher stuck out his tongue at the kid. Yeah. And the kid, this is 10 months old, alright, the kid saw that, and Mum thought nothing about it. The next day, in the same place, in the same butcher stall, the butcher was busy, and the kid was looking up at the butcher as he was passing by, and when the butcher looked up and looked down at the kid stuck his tongue out. What? You know, so there's thought, there's forethought, there's memory, there's learning. You know, so anyway, it's an interesting...
He didn't know what he was doing it for.
Eh?
No,
he wouldn't understand. I just say, you know, I suppose he did it, and what's the guy going to do back? I don't know. Anyway, I wasn't in his brain. But anyway, so it's evident in man in the world. So we need to ask, how did these things happen? Cause and effect. Something happens, you think, well, why did that happen? My wife the other night, she opened the door, and about 5 minutes later, she had this bang. The door closed. And so, what on earth happened there? And then she realised I'd opened the window. That's why the window and wind would smack the door. So, there's effect. And she automatically looks at why did that happen? The door didn't close by itself. There must have been something, and then she found the open window. See, so cause and effect. And that's the kind of question that we've got to think about. We exist. Why do we exist? How do we exist? And what all that type of stuff. Whatever you believe about anything, there are always underlying assumptions involved in that belief. For example, someone says to you, I see you're going to Peterborough by coach, Frank. What time are you leaving? And the answer will come back, 10 AM. You assume that the coach will arrive on time, that there won't be a strike or a flood or accidents or blocking the road, because as far as you're concerned, you've got a ticket for a 10 o'clock appointment with that train. And therefore, you order your life accordingly. You would be quite right even to say, I not only believe that I will be at that time, I know I will be at 10 o'clock, having absolute confidence in British Rail, and you make your plans accordingly. You know, if you got a ticket for 10 o'clock and you thought, well, I'll turn up by 10 past, you know, they're always late. You're making an assumption, you know what I mean? And you get to the station, there's your train disappearing because it was there at 10. That was the time your ticket said. So we make all sorts of plans in life, and most of those plans depend upon certain assumptions. The train left at 10 o'clock yesterday morning. It left 10 o'clock a week last Tuesday. There's a good chance it's going to leave at 10 o'clock tomorrow. And so therefore you think that way, you assume that everything will be just as it is. Of course, in the middle of the night when the gypsies come along and take off a huge chunk of copper off the train wires, and you arrive at the station, you're told, I'm sorry, there's going to be an hour's delay because the gypsies stole cause and effect. Why is my train late? Well, the gypsies have stolen the copper cable. Cause and effect, see? But we make certain assumptions and we order our lives to those assumptions.
Make the assumption it was gypsies.
Well, this is true. Sorry about that. But did you see the financial affairs of these gypsies? No, anyway. Now, well, strike that. Just in case the gypsy season. Now, the coach example may seem silly, yet in principle, it applies to almost everything that we're involved in. When we ask the big questions, where did the world come from? We make our conclusions based on certain assumptions.
God done it.
Well, that's right. Human reason will only... I shouldn't use the word only, because obviously there's other stuff in there. Will only allow two possible explanations. Either something has always existed, or there was a time when absolutely nothing existed.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when you're thinking about the concept of God, when you're thinking about the concept of evolution, when you're thinking about does God exist or does God doesn't exist, if God doesn't exist, what is your other conclusion? What are you putting in place of God? If I say to you in the beginning God created, and that's how all the world came into existence, and you say, no, that's rubbish. I couldn't believe in that. You say, okay, what do you believe in? And he said, well, I believe in the Big Bang. But you see, it's interesting. It's only about 45 years ago that they actually admitted to there being a Big Bang. Because before that, they believed that matter has always existed. It was only recently that it changed with Hoyle, when they changed the concept and the fact of, matter maybe hasn't always existed. There was a point of time and beginning. We're going to come to that one in a second. Okay, hang on there. You're hanging in there, all right? So, something has always existed, and nothing has always existed. There's always been a point in time where nothing existed. Now, we have a problem, because they have a problem, okay? We say something has always existed, and that something is God. And they say, well, who made God? See? That's an interesting question. We're not going to deal with that right now. But the idea, that's the back of the thing. Where if we turn around and say, if nothing always existed, how on earth did something come about? And they've still got that problem. Because even with the Big Bang, there's still got a problem. Okay? Anyway, we'll deal with some of this as things develop. Okay? So since we cannot conceive of something coming out of nothing, our minds refuse to accept the second possibility, the possibility that absolutely nothing existed at some point in time. Alright? Some of you have been married, okay? You know what it's like when your wife says, I was through your pockets the other night, or I can give you a better one than that, okay? You go into the shops to buy something, and you put your hand in your pocket to get the change that you knew was in there yesterday, and overnight your wife's been through your pockets and she's nicked all that money, and when you put your hand in, you've got nothing. And what happens? How can you pay for the stuff you just bought? You can't. Because you haven't got anything in your pockets. You can't get something out of nothing. And that concept runs through lots of different scenarios. And it's a reality, we can't get something out of nothing. Now if that's the case, right back at the beginning, and we exist, if you can't get something out of nothing, then where do we come from? We must have come from something.
And the Greek says, something is, therefore something always was.
Something is, something always was. And that's an earlier concept. That's actually an early evolutionary concept. Because that was the earlier, up until about 50 odd years ago, that was actually the modern atheist's concept. That there must have been something always. But the problem with something always, and we'll come to that in a second, okay, we'll deal with that in a second. What we believe about things how we believe about how things began affects every aspect of our lives and being. Where do we come from? How should we behave? Where are we going to when we die? So the big question is, where do we come from? What was always in existence? To suppose that in the complete absence of power and volition, nothing became something, seems almost too preposterous to be argued. And even an atheist will agree that something has always existed. Alright? Something has always existed. I used to use a fairly silly little illustration at one point where if you were a mountain climber and you got to the top of Mount Snowdon and you found a little doll lying at the top of the mountain when you got there, what would you assume? Would you? Why? Why couldn't the doll have evolved through the different winds and everything, and lightning striking and timber cracking off and doll being, That's basically what you're asking, see, at the end of the day. There's something there. How did it get there? Okay? So we assume that something has always existed. Christians have always assumed that something has always existed. Now the question is, has matter always existed? I don't mind if it doesn't matter. It has been transformed, and has it been transformed into its present state? By the process of organic evolution. So a lot of people who don't believe in God believe that matter had always existed in some state or form, and over time, given enough time, it will change and transform itself into you and I, living beings. Okay. Now, I'm going to say right here at the outset that I think to believe in evolution, if you understand the things involved in it, it takes more belief than it does to believe in God. To believe in God is simple for me. This table, it exists. Well, I'm absolutely certain somebody made it. I don't know who. Whether it's 6 foot 6, maybe 3 people made it, working together as a team, a welder and a carpenter. But I don't know who they are. Well, somebody made that table, and that's basically, the obvious for me. But if you imagine there was an explosion in a steel factory, and another explosion happened to happen just at the same time in a chipboard factory, and as the stuff all floated through the air, it ended up as a table. Well, good on you. That takes some balloon for. I just can't believe that.
An explosion always creates chaos.
This is good. This is good.
Now, two identical explosions, but the end result will be different.
That's right. It's interesting, isn't it? Though, having said that, in certain controlled explosions, you can actually get the same impact every time. That's why in murder cases, when they're doing bullet trajectories and the impact of a bullet, what angle it came from, they can actually replicate almost to a 99% how something happened and the angle it happened and the speed it was travelling and what it hit and just by the blood spot and everything around it. So there's interesting. There's a lot of people as an alternative to God. A lot of people believe in something called chaos theory, which is that something from chaos you can actually get some sort of reason. And the other thing is string theory. That's another one that they like. And the idea, if you ever go to some of these foreign places like, France, some of these islands with all the different sand colours, and you put them all the different sand colours in a bottle and you shake them all up, and then you leave them to settle, and it's amazing. You come out with this thing. It's all perfectly colour-coded, layered. Chaos. They do the same things in the desert. It is interesting. Well, I'll show you something, and hopefully it won't be this week, but I'll show you something like that sometime in the future. But it's interesting. So their argument is there is a certain amount of design and organisation you can get when certain things take place. But I think the amount of organisation design that we're looking at is going to take a lot more than shaking a bottle or a bunch of sand.
But David Starkey doesn't believe that. He doesn't believe what Darwin was not an atheist.
No.
Yes, strange. I didn't know about this, but yesterday I was reading Origin of Species. And page 272, if you want to make a note of that, Darwin says, there is a grandeur in this view of life, with its several powers, having been originally breathed by the Creator into many forms or few.
Yes.
So he believed in the first cause.
That's right.
That there was a Creator.
And I mean, he really struggled as he tried to work out this theory of how all these different things came about. Right. And a couple of lessons down the line, we're going to have a
that's
look
on page
at
272.
I might get a chance to add that to my armament. Anyway, okay. So, has matter always existed, or has been transformed in the present state by the process of organic evolution, or is that which is eternal a mind, an intelligence which we call God, who brought all things into being by his creative power? So that's really that's the basic question. Is there intelligence behind the table making, or is there just chance? And that's the big question. Now, a lot of the people you talk to don't even ask that question. They start off in the middle of somewhere, and then they assume certain things around that. But they won't go back to ask a big question. Even Mr. Cox wouldn't do it, Brian Cox. He actually had a program just recently, about 6 weeks ago now, where he actually said the program was supposed to be about the question of origins. And I thought, oh, this will be good, this will be interesting. And he just trotted out the same old stuff from Darwin. And I thought, is that it? He didn't answer the question. Because he can't answer the question. But he'll tell you very forcefully there is no God. Okay? So, there's the big question. Okay, in the beginning, what? If we get this wrong, or if we get this right, it makes a huge difference on every other thing that we believe, and every other direction that we go. This is the starting point. And if you make a wrong assumption here, then you end up in all sorts of trouble. Alright? And the basic question is either matter or intelligence. Did the table make itself over millions of years, or was the table made by somebody?
Or maybe you could say design or accident.
Design or accident. There's a number of there's another one, design or choice or chance.
Yeah.
There's a lot of permutations you can use, but the basic principle is because I'm using matter because of my next slides. Okay, matter or intelligence. So really, you come down to this question of matter or intelligence. Science says that by all known laws, matter has a beginning and an end. It goes from useful to useless. Now we all know that. Well, anybody who drives a car knows that you put in 30 pounds worth of petrol, and yet a few days later you're back there putting another 30 pounds in it. Where did it go? Well, first of all it went powering you down the road. The other thing it went, if you lift up the bonnet, there's heat out of the engine, there's heat out of the stubs, the axles, the rounded tyres, there's heat dissipated everywhere. Now if you could grab all that heat, put it back in a jar, and then stuff it back in your tank, you've got a bit more energy. The only problem is it still wouldn't work, because it's in a different form. It's moved from being a liquid into a gas. So it's changed its form. So you need a hydrogen engine to be able to take advantage of the heat and stuff that's escaped out of your petrol. Coal, anything, your house. Why do you have to keep fixing your house? Why do you have to be painting your house, or you're replacing your tiles, or changing your door, or looking after your window? Your double glazing falls apart eventually. These scientific laws. Now these laws, first and second law of thermodynamics, of all the laws that are in existence, are probably the two main laws that everybody accepts. Whether you're a creationist, whether you're a scientist, or whatever dog's body you are, you believe in these two laws, because at the moment, at this point in time, they've never been disproved. They still stand.
But Von Braun, who helped the Americans to develop the nuclear bomb set,
Yep.
science knows of nothing that disappears forever.
There you are.
It just changes form.
Just changes form, from useful to useless.
Yes.
Okay? But my wife says I've been doing that for years.
You've been useless.
Yeah. I was useful at one point, now I'm pretty useless. Therefore, now this is interesting, this is a conclusion that not God, the Creator, makes. This is a conclusion that science, if they actually looked at the scientific laws that they accept and go by, these two laws say evolution, organic evolution, as they want to believe in it, cannot happen. Because these two laws go totally against it. Because these two laws says matter cannot be that which has always existed. If it came into existence at a point where it was useful, and then breaks down to a point where it's no longer of use because it's changed form in that sense, the amount of energy in the universe stays the same, but its ability to be used has changed. And therefore it degrades, or downgrades, if you will. And that's what you said before, like it goes into chaos rather than into design, okay? But the point is that it implies that matter in itself must have had, if we can see it becoming more useless now, it must have a point in time where it was useful. And that points at a time that matter isn't eternal, matter had a point in time of beginning. And that's an important thing to...
How do we explain how it began then? How do we explain how it began if it had a beginning?
Well, that's easy for us. God made it. See,
Which came first, the hen and the egg?
Well, it's an interesting question, and
Really,
actually...
it's not silly, is it?
No, what do you call him on QI? Stephen Fry, he said in one of his programs recently, oh, it's obvious what came first. It was obviously the chicken that came first, the egg that came first. Because he was thinking in terms of evolutionary idea, where eggs, everything develops from eggs. But of course, you didn't come from the other way, that if you've got an egg, if you haven't got a hen to look after it, that egg goes cold and it stops to exist. Okay? What came first, the easy answer to what came first, the chicken or the egg, is the chicken came first. Because chickens can have more eggs, but eggs can't survive by themselves.
Right.
See? So that's answer that question for you. Anyway, matter, therefore, which is always is that which always existed? Can't be that which always existed.
You know, like the chicken and all that, right?
Yep.
Lays an egg. Is it instinct that gets it to sit on it, or is that a learned behaviour?
It's an innate quality that's...
Most people would say it's what, it's a bit like, it's really bad with humans, isn't it?
Yeah.
Where we have some mothers who don't care about their kids.
Yeah.
But most normal, reasonable mothers automatically want to care. Unless something's happened to them, it's changed their natural ability.
Would it not have to be a learnt behaviour?
Well, you see, it's always there's some things that are outside of learned behaviour. There's old argument. You're talking about the old argument of nurture or nature. Is it already in us, or is it being what we see around us? Now, there's a lot of what we see around us. We gather information and then we make decisions on.
Yeah.
But there are certain things that are almost automatic.
A hen doesn't sit on every egg she lays.
No.
There's a sort of natural clock there when she becomes broody and sits on the egg. Didn't sit on the egg I had this morning anyway. But at certain times of the year, the hen will sit on the, and that's when the egg hatches. Normally, the farmer goes around and gathers them up and you eat them.
And the same thing with, I mean, that's why cuckoos are so successful. Even though they're bigger eggs and they throw every other egg into the nest, the mother hen still looks after it because it's, you know, that's what mother hens do. That's what mother birds do. So it's interesting. Some of it can be learned, but a lot of it is almost instinctive, and therefore they do that. Now,
a wren.
Yep.
A wren builds a certain kind of nest.
Yep.
But its offspring is not taught how to do that.
No.
It never sees the nest being built.
Well, look at
when it grows up,
it
just does the same thing.
And how about the migratory birds?
Yes, yeah.
How few migratory birds migrate because this year we're going to fly with mum?
The Arctic tern flies back from the Arctic and has never made the trip before.
Never made. See what I mean? There's certain things that are just built in, which is interesting. And
how did they get built in?
Well, you see, it just happened by chance over millions of years, or somebody made it, somebody built it in. And that's a good, yes, Bernard?
When I had a hen run, and we had hens, if the hens weren't laying, we used to put a pot egg in the nest.
All right.
And after the hen would sit on it a few times, it would start laying again, and we'd take the pot egg out, and it would continue
That's
laying.
Right. You'd fold it into
triggering
and smothering
Stimulate nature.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I mean, a lot of these, when you think about some of these questions, you come back to, goodness, you know, there's got to be something behind it, and what caused it. Why do certain things work certain ways?
Yeah.
So anyway, for this discussion here, we're talking about the beginning. Okay, at the very beginning, before anything else. Is it feasible that matter has always existed? These two scientific laws said no. Actually, this matter had a point in time when it came into existence, and now it's running down, it's becoming useless. But the very fact it's becoming useless implies that at one time it was made useful. And that gives you a point in time with beginning.
That's what Genesis says, isn't it?
And
In the
it's exactly what
beginning
Genesis
God created the heavens and the earth.
But exactly, and you see, as far as God, that's what God says. And that's where we say, well, it's obvious, isn't it? God said in the beginning, you know, at a point in time beginning. And that's why in the last 50 years, with the Big Bang was suddenly somebody came on and said, do you know, we've been arguing for years that matter has always existed. It didn't. And these laws have been sitting there in front of our noses. It's been telling us that for years. It's just impossible for matter to always existed. So therefore, there must have been a point in time when there was a Big Bang. And then they don't ask a question, where did the bang come from? What was there to cause the bang? You don't go there. We've got past that question, forget that one. Let's move on and we'll see that as hopefully as it develops. So, here's still the basic questions that people do not ask themselves. What came first in the beginning? Matter or intelligence? And if you are an organic evolutionist, you believe that matter came first. And if you believe in intelligence, then you're on the way to believing that intelligence we call God. Now, the really interesting thing for me, and you know, I just can't get past some of these things. And the thing is, if you can't get past some of these things, if you accept this thing, then you've got to think these other things, because that naturally comes out of this conclusion. If you can't get something from nothing, then you must have been something that created everything. See what I mean? You can't get blood out of a stone, no matter how many million years you leave it lying around. Now you think about that. That's on two levels. It's a very simple level. You can't get something from nothing. By a very profound level, even if you've that nothing or a stone lying around for millions of years, that's not going to help it walk out of the sea, or fly, or end up sitting at a table listening to a lecture like this. Because a stone will still be a stone.
That's right.
After millions of years. And that's the other problem. You know, Darwin recognised that. He put forward the idea of spontaneous generation. Basically, you've got whole bunch of chemicals lying around, bit of lightning, bit of thunder, bit of flash here and there, and suddenly these chemicals start to meld together, and then they begin to, you know, sprout wings and all sorts of stuff. You know, but the funny thing is, scientists for the last 100 years have said, Darwin got it wrong. Even when they're celebrating 200 years of Darwinism, they're saying behind their back, Darwin got it wrong. You can't have something coming from nothing. You can't have spontaneous generation. And so they've been trying to do it for years.
Graham, have you got Paley's example in your notes?
It depends which one. With the watchmaker.
With the watch?
Hold on there, Frank. We've got a video of that. It's not a problem.
Okay.
Okay. But anyway, okay. I'm not going to go very far here because it's, we've got time. Looks like we're running out of time. I've got 3 minutes. So you got
8 o'clock now.
How come you said that? Did you say this right?
I'm just letting you know.
3 o'clock
I'm letting
now.
you know.
Yeah. I've seen this too. Okay. We'll wind it up there, and I'll leave that picture in your mind. Okay. Here is the something that, or the nothing that became something, according to some people, and we'll look at that next week.
Is it not?
Did you hear? Sorry.
Is it not really hard to believe that anything can be so intelligent to have created all the complexities that there are in everything in this world?
This
Ants,
Yeah.
blood,
Yeah.
me, you, we're all so very complex.
This is going to be huge. I mean, when I was preparing these things, you know, quite often I would just sit there thinking, you know, the God who made this is really something. And I think, you know, the God that I do my Sunday morning worship for is only 2% of the real God that's out there. My understanding of the God that we worship is so small. Matter of fact, J.B. Phillips wrote that book, didn't he? He said, "Is your God too small?" Well, my God is too small. The God that I think of, because I can't comprehend the kind of God that's capable of making the complexity we're going to see over the next couple of weeks.
You're right, Roger. I mean, it's staggering, really. We don't realise at the moment that we're actually travelling through space at 67,000 miles an hour, that every 12.5 minutes, every 12.5 seconds, we travel a mile around the sun. I can't hardly, but it's a
That alone is.
That's without a bus pass. That's without a bus pass.
And the moon is at the same time circling us at 20-odd thousand miles an hour.
How come
Now,
so many of these things that are
All
up
by
in the heavens
accident.
don't bump into
And we're
each
waiting
other?
for the Big Bang when they collide.
And that's the beauty of it, isn't it? I just asked Terry earlier on to put my phone right, time-wise, because he understands these things better than me. But all our phones, where do we get our time from? The atomic time clock that loses such a small percentage of time every year that everything in Greenwich Mean Time is measured by that atomic time. And it's interesting, man didn't make the atomic time. When they send a rocket off to Mars or to Mercury or wherever they want to put it, how can they know that when they send that rocket off, they assume that that trajectory is still going to be there in the 50 odd years time it takes to get there? How can they assume that? Unless they depend upon the reliability of the cosmos in which we live, and the laws are so precise that they, 50 years ago, can send something off into space knowing that if mechanically it stays sound, it's going to reach that planet. That's amazing.
How can they tell where astronauts are going to land at a certain place on the moon?
That's right. Because everything's so dependable.
Absolutely. All by
The
accident.
only things that consistently break down is the stuff we make. Anyway, Frank, would you leave the light fair?